This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. With their daughter out of town, the Kranks decide it's finally time to skip Christmas. Much comedy ensues? It's Christmas with the Kranks, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. It's our Christmas special. If you're listening to this on the day it comes out, you're listening to it on Christmas. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have a very Merry Christmas, or whatever holiday you're celebrating this time of year. We're doing Christmas with the Cranks. It's a Patreon recommendation.
Christmas with the Cranks.
Speaking of, if you want to support us, you can do that by going to patreon.com/thisfilmislit and supporting us for $2, $5, or $15 a month, or whatever amount you want. But those are our three levels. The reason we're doing Christmas with the Cranks right now is because one of our $15 patrons recommended it. It's based on the John Grisham novel Skipping Christmas. We'll get into all those details here very shortly. But one of the perks of donating at the $15 level is you get priority recommendation. So if you throw something out there, we'll try to get to it ASAP, as soon as possible. We have a very long list. Lots of people recommend things, but we can't always, obviously can't get to everybody's recommend. It's impossible. Yeah. But if you got to support us for $15 a month, we'll get your stuff a little quicker. Because, you know, that's a thank you.
To the front of the line.
Capitalism. But yeah, so that's why we're doing Skipping Christmas / Christmas with the Cranks. Katie, we do not have a Guess Who this week.
No.
We can do a brief Let Me Sum Up, I guess. So let's do that.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
So, is it similar enough that we can do one? Okay, I'll just do one real quick. It's on Netflix. If you want to pause right now and go watch it, you can. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it might help, some of the stuff we're going to talk about.
Maybe, read the Wikipedia article if you don't feel like you got enough from us.
Watch the trailer.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's on Netflix, so you can watch it if you would like to. But so Christmas with the Cranks is about the Crank family, the father, which is Luther Crank. Their daughter is, and this is the movie, and hopefully similar in the book. Their daughter is going to be out of town for on a Peace Corps mission over Christmas. So they decide this year. Luther decides, hey, we should, instead of doing Christmas, we spend all this money on Christmas. We should just go on a Caribbean cruise and enjoy ourselves. So they decide to skip Christmas, hence the title of the book. A monkey wrench gets thrown in their plans, though, when the daughter decides she's coming home for Christmas, and they have to suddenly... also, first, before we get to that, this leads to much outrage amongst their neighbors and the people in the community it's a big Christmas community. They're very upset at the Cranks for skipping Christmas. They're a big part of the Christmas thing in the town, so they're not happy about that. So there's a lot of hijinks with that. Then when they find out their daughter's coming back for Christmas, so they have to cancel going on the cruise, try to come up with a Christmas.
Cancel their cancellation of Christmas.
Yeah.
Lots of canceling going on.
Hashtag cancel culture. So then they have to re-put on Christmas. The town comes together to help save the day, put the Christmas party together for the daughter when she shows up with her new fiance. And then they learn a lesson? I don't know, and we'll get to that eventually. But that's roughly...
We're gonna get to that.
That's roughly the premise of what goes on here. So, we don't have a Guess Who, like you said, so we're gonna get right into... Was that in the book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
I got some questions. This is going to be a little more freeform. I don't really care about the answer to any of these because this movie was stupid, and I know that you weren't a big fan of the book, so... Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
Okay. We'll get your full opinions at the end of this episode and over the course of it. But
yeah.
Are there names, because this is my first question, because the movie is titled Christmas with the Kranks, we talked about why they didn't call it Skipping Christmas, was because there was a movie coming out the same year titled Surviving Christmas, so the studio decided we got to come up with different names, so they went with Christmas with the Kranks, which makes me wonder, because it's a rather on-the-nose name, the Kranks, is that their name in the book?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're just the Kranks.
Yes.
Is anybody's name Crank?
Like in real life?
Yes.
It's a good question.
Probably, but it seems
ridiculous.
I don't buy it.
Why don't I just hop on over to Facebook and see?
You're going to do a quick...
I'm going to do a quick...
Look up Luther Crank. See if there is a real-life Luther Crank, or if you're just going to get like a parody account that's like Tim Allen. Profile picture, you know what I mean? Crank.
There appears to be a Luther Crank who is Spanish, maybe?
Oh, is it not an American? That would be interesting if it was a non-American or non-English like last name that I just had never heard of. Because I've never heard of, I've never met anybody with the name Crank in my sort of limited scope of life.
I mean, this could be a real person. It could also not be a real person.
Yeah, you never know with
Facebook after all.
It could be a Russian bot.
Could be.
All right, but that is their name in the book, and that's really all that I was wondering. So cool. Second question: the premise, is the rough premise the same? I was kind of banking on it being so when we did the Let Me Sum Up. But so the premise in the movie, like I said, is the daughter goes out of town, so the parents decide we're skipping Christmas because our daughter's not here. We're gonna be sad when she's not here for Christmas. So screw it. We're just not doing Christmas. We're going on a cruise. Is that what happens?
Yes, exact same premise. She joins the Peace Corps. She goes to Peru. They decide to skip Christmas and go on a cruise.
Okay. Speaking of that decision, how does that occur? Because in the movie, the way that occurs is to me, felt like a very movie way of doing this. Tim Allen is out, who plays Luther Crank, the father, is out running errands in the rain, soaked to the bone, and he just comes across a glowing display advertising Caribbean cruises, and he's like, has his eureka moment. Is that what happens in the movie?
No.
Okay.
During that rainy trip to the store, he does start thinking about how nice it would be to skip Christmas, but there's no like aha moment with a billboard.
Okay. But he does crunch the numbers like he does. He's an accountant or whatever still because we never hear explicitly what he is at the... Yeah,
he's an accountant.
But it looks like he's an accountant in the movie based on the number crunching and stuff he's doing. Okay, so this scene's wild. This scene's wild in the movie. He's going to... They're having dinner, the mom and the dad. I say the mom and the dad. The two main characters, Luther and now I can't remember her name. Nora Crank are having dinner, and Luther decides he's gonna spring his idea for skipping Christmas on her in the film, and he says, "I have something for you," and he runs out of the room, and she thinks, because of the way he said it, it makes sense. She thinks she's about to get some, and she starts she's unbuttoning her blouse and messing with her hair, and she's getting real hot and bothered, and then he comes back in and starts playing Caribbean music and dancing. Yeah. And she's, okay, maybe this is, maybe we're doing a little thing. Maybe it's a little role play sesh or something. Like a real, offensive role play sesh. and then he whips out his binder full of notes about going on a Caribbean cruise, and it becomes very clear that's not the case. It's a wild scene. Mm-hmm. Is that in the book?
This scene is the moment in the movie when I knew that we were in for a long couple of hours. Oh, and it is not in the book.
Yeah, I was like, okay. Great.
I was like, oh, this is what this is going to be.
This is what we're doing here.
This is what we're doing.
She says it's not even Saturday, I think at least 3 times in that scene. And I was like, this is some real middle-aged white people shit.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's not even Saturday.
Yeah, this is... they know their audience. They're going for that audience. Yeah. But it's... I got some more notes about it in odds and ends in our general discussion about some of the tropes that this movie trades on that are just the worst. And the this is one of those, the sexually unsatisfied middle-aged
couple that bones in the dark under the covers with their socks on.
Yeah. Fun. Do they cut out everything to do with Christmas? I thought this was interesting in the movie and kind of silly, is that in the movie, so when they decide they're going to do this cruise, his Luther's stipulation is, well, we cut out everything related to Christmas. We're not sending Christmas cards. We're not donating money to the charities, which he caves on that, which was, I think we'll get to it, but it was silly to me. But we're not donating charities. We're not doing literally anything. We're not decorating, nothing. Is that the kind of level of commitment in the book?
That is the level of commitment in the book. And the charity thing is similar. That's the only thing that he caves on. But
he does put up a fuss about it a little bit in the book? A little bit,
yeah. Okay. And in the book, it doesn't really make all that much sense either. Like, the reaction that I had to it was like, you guys could have done like a scaled back Christmas. Yeah. And this whole thing probably would have been way easier on you.
Yeah.
Because, like, the big things that you're spending money on are, I assume, presents.
Party.
Presents, party. Those are the two, like, big ticket things, I would think.
Yeah. And maybe if you're buying, like, new decorations or something. But
sure.
Yeah, generally.
But you don't have to buy new decorations, because keep your Christmas decorations. You put out the same things every year. Yeah. So you're not paying for a party. You're not paying for gifts because your daughter's in Peru.
Yeah. Well, at least for her.
Yeah. Well, you can agree not to buy each other gifts.
Yeah. And there's an allusion in the movie to the, like, he's not getting gifts for, like, his coworkers or whatever, which weird. Not weird. Like, it's nice to get some of your coworkers something, maybe, depending on the situation. You know, you suss out the dynamic of your workplace and whether or not that's... He doesn't seem like a boss. He's an accountant. It seems weird. I guess he has a secretary.
Yeah, he has a secretary. So like, I see, getting something for your secretary.
You should get her something regardless of what they're doing
but,
for
like,
Christmas.
Here's, like, the thing is that you could scale back and not spend nearly as much money as he said that they spend.
Yeah, $6,000 in the movie. I don't know if that's a similar number or if it's even really mentioned in the book, but...
And that would have been way easier on you guys.
Yeah.
Because your neighbors wouldn't have pitched a fit.
Which we'll get to. I still fuck their neighbors. It's crazy nonsense, the way this movie presents it. But, yes.
Like, I agree. I'm just saying, if you wanted a relatively stress-free Christmas,
that's
I feel
true.
like scaled back is actually the way to go.
That is very true. That if their goal actually was to, like, spend not as much money and to, like, reduce the amount of stress involved, you do a couple of some of the stuff,
and not all of the stuff, because I mean, we'll get to the neighbors. I don't want to talk about it now. Yeah. But it is the reality of the situation that if you decided to skip Christmas, you would have to spend the entire season explaining that to everyone.
True.
Which I would personally find exhausting.
Very, very true. Yeah. It is true. And I think the thing that's most frustrating about that is that, and we'll get to it like you said, is that the book and the movie both don't seem to have any commentary about that being the case. Like, this would be a very interesting book and movie to me if the point of the book and the movie, at least to some extent, was how ridiculous it is that you would have to explain to every person you met all winter why you're, like, not doing Christmas this year.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. But that's not the point. So in that case, I don't understand the sort of weird, like, complete cutoff of Christmas that occurs. At least in the movie, without ever having read the book, in the movie, there doesn't seem to be enough explanation or setup for why that's the case.
Yeah.
Or why they decide to do that. In the movie, there's a scene, since they're going on a cruise, Tim Allen decides they need to go tanning. And he buys them the literal swimsuits from the billboard. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
That the people in the billboard were wearing. And it's a very small bikini and like a Speedo
thing
that he's wearing. And
horrifying.
And Jamie Lee Curtis is like squeezed in this tiny bikini, and they go to the tanning salon to get a tan for their cruise or whatever. And it's a whole scene. It's a whole thing. I just want to know if that whole debacle is in the book.
No, she does have a tiny bikini that she goes tanning in. They both go tanning. And she does bump into the priest at the mall, but those two things don't collide in the same way that they do in the movie.
But she bumps into the priest in the mall, but not wearing the bikini?
She's wearing it, but she's wearing it under her clothes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's like very uncomfortable, but it's not like
it's not this like
it's
huge
not like a
social...
weird voyeuristic,
yeah,
creepy.
Yeah.
That scene was horrid. I hated it.
It is horrid, and it's all. It's interesting that it's at least somewhat in the book, because I thought they may have added that whole thing just because they're like, we need some sex appeal in this film. Let's put Jamie Lee Curtis in a bikini that doesn't fit her. They
were like, just take the scene and make it gross.
Yeah. Take this, make it gross. Boom. And then a Crisco'd up Tim Allen comes out. Oh, so
and he's
upsetting.
Wearing the Speedo.
So
and
upsetting.
You can see everything. I'm so upset, and you guys. I'm so upset.
Swear to God, they airbrushed abs onto him.
Did they?
I swear to, because there's no way that man has abs with his physique in this film. But I swear to God, there's it's like 300 level. Like they airbrushed on some lines to like get. It looks like it to me. I could be wrong, but
I'm so upset, you guys.
It's not great. It's not great. So another thing I was wondering about, all the cartoon nonsense in this film. There's not a ton, but there's a couple things that happen that are like these weird. This is like when we talked about in the I Love You, or no, the Netflix one we watched where she sends the letters.
Oh, To All the Boys I Loved
Before. To All the Boys I've Loved Before. I was getting confused with Simon.
Simon.
Love Simon. In that movie, they had some like weird, like sort of like surreal cartoon elements that like just like occurred a couple times. And this one's similar. And in this one, it's like he hoses down, Luther hoses down the front sidewalk to like keep the carolers off their porch or whatever from singing.
And he also apparently hates the mailman.
Yeah, and he also
for no reason
hates the
that
mailman
we're privy to,
because he does see the mailman fall and like laughs about it, which makes no sense. But he so he sprays down the front sidewalk, and all the carolers show up again, and they all sliding everywhere. And then his wife goes out and slide like she's doing a slip and slide down the sidewalk. And everybody's fine, but it's like this big slapstick moment. And then she looks over, and the neighborhood cat, apparently also got sprayed, has been frozen in place and has, its eyes are like its cartoon eyes are moving. And I was like, wait a second, where did this come from? Is that
none of that is in the book?
It's not.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's not good. The Botox scene, maybe the worst scene in the movie. That's a tough, stiff competition, but it's
really,
not.
It is.
Luther, before their cruise, decides he wants to get some Botox done, so he goes to get Botox.
Yeah.
And that also shaves half of his eyebrows off for some reason. I don't understand what's going on there.
I couldn't tell if they were supposed to be a little bit shaved or if it was just like they were cranked up because of the Botox.
I don't know.
But
anyways, he gets Botox, and now he can't control his face. He can't do things, so he's like eating, and they're at like a lunch or something. He's like trying to eat and drink, and everything's just falling out of his mouth, and it's just Tim Allen doing gross food improv for like a whole scene, and I
hated it.
Is that in the book?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. I'm really upset that they added that.
At no point is Botox ever even mentioned in this book.
Okay.
So, book's better. That's it.
Boom. There you go. So we spoke earlier about some of the gross tropes that are in this movie. Or gross. Some of them are gross. Some of them just like tired and old and bleh. This one's a gross trope. Luther has a horrifying obsession with his daughter's sexuality when he finds out that she is potentially sleeping with a man. Now, keep in mind, she's easily college age.
She's like just post-college, I think.
Post-college age. She's early 20s, probably. and she's on away on the Peace Corps, and she calls and says she's coming home and bringing her boyfriend, and he's losing his mind over the idea that his daughter was possibly sleeping with a man, and he can't. Nope. Can't have that. Can't have my daughter being a human person. I'm a man. Can't have my daughter being a real human person. He loses his mind over it. Well, first off, it's like my least favorite trope ever. Second off, it's even grosser because it's so clearly, it's so like steeped in like reality. Like it's not, it's one of those tropes that's not like just a weird movie thing that like nobody understands why it's a movie thing.
That is a real thing.
Absolutely.
That affects a lot of real people.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. It's one of those tropes. It's like, you know, it's like we were talking about like with the like high school movies where it's always the vice principal, and like we were trying to figure out if that is really even a thing or whatever. And some people said yeah, but like a lot of people are like, what? I don't know. This one is like a trope that's absolutely a real thing. This
is one of those havoc-wreaking tropes.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the I look, I don't have kids, but so I don't know, but it's the grossest thing to me in the entire universe that you wouldn't that you would be that worried about the fact that your children, honestly, like of any like reasonable age, are engaging in a pivotal part of human life, let alone someone who's a straight up adult. Is wild to me, and I don't get it, and I hate it. But anyways, is that in the book?
There probably is, knowing this book, but I can't think of anything specific that happened, so nothing awful enough for it to stick out in my memory. I was also distracted by the racism.
Oh, so there's racism in the book.
Oh, is there?
There's only like the tiniest bit in the movie. Not even really that much. It's like you get the vibe that Tim Allen is distrustful of her boyfriend in part because he is Peruvian.
Yeah.
But specifically more like he's a communist or whatever.
He says like there's one point in the movie where he talks about how she's with people in the rainforest who like worship trees.
Oh, okay.
Which is paraphrased from something in the book.
Okay.
And then later on, he says something about them sleeping in huts.
Okay. That's interesting because I actually took the tree line about worshiping trees. I wasn't even thinking about that being a slight at the indigenous people. I was thinking that being a weird insult at like the Peace Corps of like being full of hippies. Like tree huggers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I like. But I think you're probably right that it would. Yeah. Okay. So, well, okay, racism, right?
Yeah,
Great.
we'll get to that more later.
Cool.
I want to read some bits from the book.
Oh boy, can't wait. Do they have to scramble to put a party together within a few hours when they find out their daughter's showing up because they were planning to leave on Christmas Day, so they weren't doing it? Obviously, they canceled Christmas. But no, she's coming back. They're like, oh, we got to throw a party together. Is that in the book?
Yes.
Okay.
That is the third act of the book.
Okay. It's the third act of the movie. And that third act is a very long act.
It's a very long third act.
It's like 2/3 of the movie is the third act of this movie. It's weird. Does he try to borrow a tree from his neighbor?
Yes.
Because he can't buy a tree in the movie. He goes to buy a tree. Obviously, it's Christmas Eve. They're all gone. He gets like a terrible one, and then he has to go borrow a tree. He tries to... Like, he goes to his neighbor's like, hey, I need your tree. You're going out of town. Give me your tree. That's in the... So that
scene is mostly the same.
It's real dumb.
It's not smart.
I mean, I know this is like sort of your classic, like, fun holiday movie hijinks. That's like, obviously this stuff's, you know... It's intentionally, like, over the top. But it's just, like, go buy it. Like you said, like, time to go get an artificial tree.
Yeah. Time to get you on down to the mall. Just go get you an artificial tree.
They don't run out of those so much.
Yeah.
I mean, and they might be out of some of them, but you'll find at least one. Yeah. It's like, it's stupid. So this neighborhood has this whole crazy cult thing where they all put Frosty on the snowman on their roof in the movie, and they all have to do it, or else they get exiled from the community. And the way that Tim Allen goes about doing this once he decides they need to decorate for Christmas for their daughter is he ties a noose around Frosty's neck and hauls it onto the roof hand over hand with a rope. And it's the stupidest thing that you could do. and this results in him falling off the roof. Is that in the book, that whole scene?
He does fall off the roof, trying to put Frosty up there, but there is no noose.
Okay, does he get caught in the rope when he's falling?
Yes, he does get caught
so
in the
that's
rope
like the same.
and dangle. Yeah.
Okay. Because I felt like they really missed an opportunity. Now, I guess if they wanted to do the, like, he gets caught in the rope, they would have had to figure out a more elaborate way to do this scene. But I felt like they really missed an opportunity here to have him pulling up Frosty, and then it falls. And then as all the neighbors run over, he literally, like, lynches Frosty in front. Like, I mean, it's dark and crazy, but like it could be funny, like in a weird dark way. I don't think it would fit.
But it is maybe the type of thing that this movie might have tried, though.
I think you could do it in a way, like in the right kind of movie. I think it could be done in a really like if the overall like humor of this movie was completely different, I think it could be really funny. It would just be like in poor taste in this film. But like if he had like hung Frosty from the roof on accident, I thought it was like what I was expecting to happen, but actually Frosty just falls off the roof and explodes, but then they have another one. I don't know.
Well, everybody has one. So
did they just get one from somebody else's house?
Borrow one from
I didn't remember.
Another one of the houses.
Right. There you go.
I guess one that is not clearly visible, so it doesn't matter if they have a Frosty or not. I don't know.
Yeah. In the book, do the terrifying culty neighbors end up saving the day? Are they the heroes of our story?
Yes. The whole neighborhood comes together to throw a party.
Oh, gotta talk about this later. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about it.
We gotta talk about this.
We're gonna talk about it.
Because they're okay, all right. That's a weird, Do we go on a side mission in the book or in the movie? There's some cops that have been involved in the film played by Cheech Marin and can't remember his name. The crazy guy's son. Anyways, doesn't matter. Gary Busey's son.
Oh.
It's Jake Busey. It's played by Cheech Marin and Jake Busey, the cops in the movie. And they have to go pick up the daughter from the airport, and they need to stall because the party's not set up yet. So they like go driving around, and they end up getting a call and going and finding a burglar. And it's this whole crazy side nonsense in the last 30 minutes of the movie. They're like, what is happening? Is that in the book? Any of that stuff?
No, none of that stuff.
So then by the extension, there's a moment later in the movie where Dewey from Malcolm in the Middle unhandcuffs said burglar, who then goes into the party and steals stuff for a plot that literally does not matter. Like, none of this matters.
Yeah, none of it matters, and it's not in the book.
Okay, cool. This one I want to know. Marty the Mystery Guest. This is probably my favorite thing in the movie. Like, one of the only things that I found legitimately funny was this guy that Nora runs into at the liquor store who like seems to know her, and she doesn't know who he is, but she invites him to the Christmas party anyways because at the time nobody's coming, so she's just kind of desperately asking anybody. And he's kind of a weird, quirky character. And then he shows up at the party and still nobody knows who he is, but he's like this still really interesting character who speaks, I guess, do they speak Peruvian? And I actually don't know if it's Peruvian or...
I don't know.
Anyway, he speaks whatever language Enrique speaks, which I think is Peruvian, but I could be wrong. And so they're like talking, and then they sing. Maybe it's just Spanish because it sounds like Spanish. It's probably an offshoot. It's probably a similar. Anyways, doesn't matter. Because the Christmas song they sing in the movie sounds vaguely Spanish, like because they're saying like Feliz something, you know. Anyways, he's like, he speaks Spanish, he plays guitar, he's like all these different things. It's really interesting, and nobody knows who he is. And then the reveal at the end is stupid. I really wish they hadn't had that part, and he was just this weird guy who shows up. But I really thought that his whole like little side plot was actually pretty funny. Is that from the book? Well,
you would have liked the version of this in the book then, because it is exactly the same, except that his reveal does not happen the way that it does in the movie. Yeah,
that's much better.
He's just a guy from the neighborhood.
So his reveal in the movie is, and we'll kind of talk about it here in a second. His reveal in the movie is that he was the Santa Claus on the street in the beginning who was trying to sell an umbrella to Tim Allen.
Yeah.
And then he shows up at the end of the movie with an umbrella and beats down the burglar. It's all nonsense, but like he was, oh, you're that Santa? That's who you are. I don't know how that explains how he knows who they are. It doesn't really.
No. Honestly, when I was reading the book and his little kind of side plot offshoot was going on, I was thinking to myself, if this was a different book and there was more of the book left, this could actually be about to get interesting. Because you could take that to a really dark place.
Oh, this is like a serial killer?
Yeah, because he just, like, knows who their daughter is.
Yeah.
I would, as a mother, I would have found that intensely creepy.
Yeah. I thought it was a funny trope in the sense that, like, or not trope, but I thought it was a funny little thing in the movie in the sense that, like I said, I thought it was, like, the only thing that was, like, I actually found genuinely funny was that, you know, that it's a thing that you can kind of identify with of, like, being at a party and, like, there's a guy there who nobody really knows, but he seems to know people and you're not sure. There must be somebody that knows him, but you don't know, like, and just the way the guy plays that role in the movie was very funny to me. Like, he's very strange and just kind of off-putting, but also, and then, like, the turn, because you get that vibe in the movie initially, is like, is this guy gonna murder them all?
Yeah.
And then that turn of him being, like, this really sweet guy who, like, is very friendly with Enrique and they, like, bond and, like, he's like talking, like, I really enjoyed that little side plot. It was, like, again, like, the only thing that I thought was, like, good in the movie was that little, like, strange subplot. But okay, big question, and we don't have to get all into it here, but I just want to touch on it because what's the moral of this book? Because the moral of this movie makes no fucking sense. His wife says at the end of the movie, I was hoping everyone coming together, she says this to Luther, I was hoping everyone coming together to help us, this is at the end of after the party, would make you start thinking of others and not just yourself. And that, I feel like, hasn't really been the case in the movie the whole time. Like, Tim Allen's character in this movie, because their daughter's not going to be there and he realizes I honestly think the movie portrays him as thinking more about his wife almost than anything else, at least for part of it, because his whole plan is because his wife's really depressed and upset about the idea of doing Christmas without their daughter there for the first time ever. And he goes, hey, maybe what we do, instead of doing that and being sad that she's not here, maybe we just don't do that stuff. We save some money and we go enjoy a cruise together. Like, just the two of us. It'll be great. And she seems really excited about it. And it seems like they're going to have a great time. And he even has moments in the movie, which is really weird too, where he's like, eventually he kind of becomes a dick about it because he's Tim Allen and he can't not do that. But in the beginning, we'll get more on that later. But in the beginning, he's even, like, really cool about it in general, like, at work. Like, he writes up that letter. Yeah. And he says in the letter, like, look, I'm not going to say I'm not telling anybody else go ahead, celebrate Christmas, enjoy yourself. I'm not going to, like, you know, be weird if you come up to me and say Merry Christmas. I'm just we're not doing it this year. We're not doing presents. We're not, you know, all that stuff. We're just not doing it. We're going to go on a cruise, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to take some time for ourselves. And everybody loses their goddamn minds about it. Yeah. And the moral of the movie is, like, you're so selfish. And I felt like I was, like, a crazy person. Like, he wasn't that selfish. Like, they've been doing this for 30 years, you know. They're, like, in their 40s or whatever. They've been doing this their whole life. Mm-hmm. And they want one time to not do it. And all of a sudden, he's the most selfish person in the whole damn world. And I just was like, this is a stupid message. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Is that the same message in the book? Like, what? All
right. So the answer is yes and also no. Because it is kind of the same in the book, where I think the message gets garbled. Because if this was supposed to be, like, an indictment of, like, capitalist Christmas and the way that everybody gets kind of insane about Christmas, then that message gets the rug pulled out from under it at the end, right? When everybody, like, comes together.
We have to have all the traditional trappings of Christmas or this isn't Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That gets the rug pulled out from under it. But also it doesn't really work as, like, a asshole Grinchy thing for all of the reasons that you said.
Yeah. And also, we'll get to it even more, but because also he doesn't even... I'll get to it in a second, but he also doesn't even... I have it in my general notes, so talk about it in a second.
And which is even more garbled in the book, because in the movie, by the end of it, he does become quite a bit of an asshole.
Yeah, at times, yeah, for sure. There are elements of things that he does that he's an asshole, yeah.
But that's not really the case in the book.
Yeah.
Now, the other difference in the book is that there is a slight difference in the way that the book portrays the neighbors versus how the movie does. I think the movie, like, there's still, like, weird moments in the book of, like, you guys are a little too obsessed with Christmas.
Yeah.
Like, you're too into this, and the way that you're acting is weird. But the movie, like, kind of cranks that up to 11.
Right, because of course it does.
Yeah.
For the comedy.
So, where, you know, in the book, you could kind of read it as, like... oh, he thinks his neighbors are assholes and they're kind of weird, but maybe a lot of this is in his head.
Right.
And, like, it's more about how he's perceiving them than about, like, how they actually feel about the situation. But in the movie, you can't really do that.
I think they try to do that because there's that whole scene with the kid, with Dewey, where Dewey's like... oh, all that stuff, like where Tim Allen tackles a 7-year-old or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And the kid is like, oh, all that stuff about Frosty, we were just joking, like where we were like standing outside your house yelling at you for hours and pounding signs into your lawn and prank calling you over and over and over again. It was just pranks, bro.
Yeah.
And like, I think we're supposed to be like, oh, he was making a bigger deal out of it than it was, but it doesn't sell. Like, I'm just like, no, it seems like you guys were being crazy.
Yeah.
And
So I'm not sure what the message of this story is. I don't think John Grisham knew what the message was. And then subsequently, I don't think Chris Columbus or Joe Roth knew what the message was.
Yeah.
So
it gets so muddied, and we'll talk about it a little more when we get to my odds and ends.
It's so muddy,
but it's like it just and there's a third act that the third act makes literally no sense because it pretends that a character's motivations were something different than they were the whole time. It feels like where it's like again, Tim Allen's motivations were. I don't want my wife to be sad about the daughter not being here, and I want to do something for us. And then it turns that into he hates everybody and only thinks about himself. And it's like, what? Yeah. That's not what's been occurring like most of this film. I don't understand. Okay, we'll talk about it more in a few minutes. Does he give the cruise? So ultimately, they can't go on the cruise because their daughter's going to be there, and he gives the cruise to the neighbors. Across the street, this old guy he doesn't really like, and his wife who has cancer, and her cancer has come back recently, and there's a chance that she's not going to live a whole lot longer. And he finally decides, okay, I'm going to give them the cruise, let them take the cruise. Is that in the book?
Yes,
it is. So he does give it to them.
Yes, he does.
Okay. I also thought it was very strange that this movie acts like this is some giant sacrifice for him, that this is like he like thinks about it for so long, and he even when he gets in there and he's going to give it to him, he's like, it's the vacation of a lifetime. He explained in the beginning of the movie that this cruise costs $3,000.
Yes,
for a 10-day all-inclusive cruise.
Half as much as they usually
half as much as they usually spend just on Christmas. P.S. When you watch this movie, these people are clearly fucking loaded.
Right, they all live in McMansions.
They live in giant mansions in a very fancy suburb of Chicago.
Yeah.
And they act like $3,000 is like this huge charity that he like this huge sacrifice that he's making, and it's this big deal, and it's again, it's ridiculous.
Rich people.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's like $3,000 to this guy. Seemingly, he works at it seems like he works at either a big fancy law firm or a big fancy some sort of financial company. It says something in associates on the wall.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a law firm or whatever. It could be, like I said, financial company. It could be anything. But some sort of big fancy thing in the city, in Chicago.
Yeah.
And he's like a higher up accountant for this company. It's $3,000. $3,000 is a shit ton of money to us. $3,000 is not a shit ton of money to people that live in a house like that outside of Chicago.
No,
it's just not. It's just not.
And I think the movie amps that up a little bit based on what the book is. Like, they're still very well off in the book. Like, they're doing fine. I do think that the movie maybe, like, blew that up a little.
Yeah.
But not much.
Yeah.
Not much.
I think the thing is that I think that they wanted the big, like, crazy houses for the decoration.
Yeah,
and
they
for
wanted
the
a
hijinks,
big Home Alone house.
And for the look of the movie. But then they didn't realize that obviously these people, in order to be living there, would have to be making a very good amount, again, for it to be right outside of Chicago, because he just drives into Chicago downtown every morning.
And she doesn't work.
She
does, like, charity work and housewife stuff.
Yeah.
Which is the same in the book. She does not work.
Yeah, and so, like, clearly this house is very, very expensive, and it's $3,000. Like, I mean, again, for most people, that's a lot of money. For some people, for these kind of people, it's still, like, not nothing.
Right.
But it's not like this is the vacation of a lifetime. People like that, spoilers, take $3,000 vacations like every year.
Yeah.
Like literally every year. I mean, well, they could afford to take $3,000 vacation.
Yeah,
whether or not they do is, like, if they don't have time or whatever. But, like, drove me crazy. Anyways, Eat the rich. Heard it here on Christmas. Finally, in the end of the movie, we talked about Marty earlier. He turns out he's actually Santa. Maybe. Or we're all high at the end on peyote. He gets in his VW Bug and drives away to go sell umbrellas to people in the snow, because that's when people buy umbrellas, is when it's snowing. I hate this movie. And he gets in the car and he drives away, and then the camera pulls back to a big sky shot to reveal the cult town that these people live in with their cookie color. They could have started playing the little ticky-tack house song thing from whatchamacallit. And then the camera pulls back, and then he flies past the camera. His VW Bug is now being towed by reindeer. Turns out he's really Santa, maybe.
I told you that. We were getting close to the end of the movie. I was like, we're not getting out of this without, he was the real Santa.
He was actually Santa.
He was actually Santa.
A little wink and a nose touch to the camera, and then
Yeah.
Flies away in his VW Bug towed by reindeer. Is that in the book?
That is not in the book.
Okay, cool. Moving on. That's it for Was That in the Book? So many things. Let's talk about what was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
My better in the book is mostly complaints about the movie.
Cool.
We already covered a lot of this, so I think I can scoot through this pretty quickly for you guys. I could really skip the weird almost sex scene where he sells her on the cruise.
Yeah.
We talked about it. Don't want to rehash it.
Nope.
But really could have done without it. One of Nora's friends supports their decision to skip Christmas. There's a short scene in the movie where she's talking to her friends at like a restaurant. And similarly, one of them is like, gasp, how could you skip Christmas? But the other one is like, you know what?
Yeah.
That's a good call. So I thought that was, Yeah,
that's interesting. It adds a different element where it's not like everybody. Like, there's at least a couple people who are like, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Do what you want.
The scene where she's driving and the neighbor's like clinging to her car, and then he like leaves his gloves behind, and it's a weird scene. I didn't like it.
It's one of those scenes that escalates to the point of. I mean, a lot of the scenes in this movie escalate to the point of non-believability, but that's one of the ones that's just like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, like, what do you want me to get out of this?
Yeah.
Speaking of scenes like that, making the ice slick in the front yard, and then all the slipping and sliding around, and especially the frozen cat.
Yeah, the frozen cat is...
Like, this movie had a lot of that kind of cartoony, over-the-top, cheesy, like, comedy that I just don't really care for. Like, I don't think it works.
Yeah. You know what? Here's the thing that I think is wild to me is that I think they could do that exact same thing and get or a similar thing and get a laugh that felt earned and felt just like more real. Is, let's say it's one night late and we see Tim Allen has some whiskey, and so he's a little tipsy, and he's out spraying. It's after like the carolers have been on his lawn harassing him, or the neighbors have been on the lawn harassing him, and so he's one night late. He's been drinking a little bit. He's like, you know what? Fuck them. And he goes and he sprays down the sidewalk because he's like, there, teach them to come up here. And then the next day, he walks out because he forgot he did it.
Yeah.
And slips and eats it and falls down, and slides down and eats it. And then he's like, or if you don't want to do that, or he sees the mailman fall, but instead of being like, ha ha ha, like he is in the movie, he's like, oh, shit, I should. And then, the next scene is him, scraping the ice up. You know what I mean? So he's a normal human being. I feel like you could still get that joke, that laugh that you want from somebody slipping and the joke of that and blah 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 blah, but also have it feel because then you can also that little moment feeds into the idea of we've all done stupid things like that when we're a little tipsy and we're like, this is a good idea, and then the next day that was a terrible idea. I feel like that, I feel like that's how you do something like that in a way that's relatable and feels real, as opposed to where the movie he's a cartoon villain for some reason all of a sudden.
Yeah,
stupid.
I agree. The bow tax scene we talked about.
Yeah, it's the worst.
It's the worst. Why do they have to have him eating? Was it not enough for his face to just be stiff and terrifying? Why did there have to be peaches falling out of his mouth?
Because comedy. We get to watch Tim Allen improv eat for...
I don't like it. I did not consent to having that scene play out before me.
They need to play they needed a title card before that scene that says, Are you ready to view a movie that could possibly hurt you? Or a scene in a movie that could possibly damage you? Or are you in the right headspace to watch a scene in a movie that could possibly cause you harm?
I hated it. I hated it so much. Okay, moving on. This is not really that big of a thing, but I have it on here because something about it just didn't sit right with me. I could have done without the ham getting run over by a semi.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I just I don't know.
That was fine. I didn't have any problem with that. It was a little cheesy, but whatever.
Yeah. The last minute side story with the cops.
So it's...
They were the cops are oh, we have to stall. And I was like, the movie is stalling.
Absolutely.
Why is the movie stalling?
It hit 1:35 because this movie's 1 minute or 1 hour and 35 minutes long. And that side plot gets them that extra 5 or 6 minutes that they needed to break the 90-minute mark. Yeah.
Okay, so the end of this. I liked the movie's choice of having him walk outside and consider the two different tableaus of the party going on in one house and his sad cancer-ridden neighbors in the other house. But I didn't like the whole thing that we talked about where he's still insisting that they can go, and then Nora has to yell at him and accuse him of being selfish. And the abrupt heel turn at the end does not work.
It makes no sense.
In the movie. No, it doesn't.
I'm glad you're right, because this is what I want to talk about again. It makes literally no sense, because the thing that's wild to me is that, so on top of what I said earlier about, his motivation doesn't seem all that selfish for most of the movie, when he does start being a jerk in the middle, sure, I get it. But then, from the moment he finds out his daughter is coming home, he's fully on board with trying to get this Christmas thing together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's not objecting to it really. He's not right. No. He's okay.
He's not thrilled about it, but
he's doing this stuff. He's trying to get a Christmas tree. He's trying to he's going through so much that he's trying to steal a neighbor, not steal, but borrow a Christmas tree from the neighbor and all this nonsense, and he seems into it and he's excited to see his daughter, and then they show up and then all of a sudden he's but I really want to go on that cruise.
Yeah.
And she has to berate him about it. And it's wait, what's going... It felt like it just... The motivation was just so wishy-washy.
Yeah, I do think... I think it works a little better in the book. I think in the book he has a lot of pride throughout the first part of the book.
Yeah.
Which is maybe that thematic element that I was not thinking of earlier when we were trying to talk about like what the point of this book is. I don't really think pride is the point of this book, but he does have a lot of pride in like the decision that he's made.
Yeah.
And I think accepting that help from his neighbors in his moment of need humbles him a little.
Yeah.
And he's able to kind of step back and say maybe they're not that bad.
Right. The neighbors.
The neighbors. Maybe they're not as bad as I think they are.
Yeah.
And it's a very quiet kind of moment in the book, and I think it works better than it does in the movie, because he doesn't still insist that they can go on that cruise.
Cool. All right, that was it for Better in the Book. Let's talk about what was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
We talked about him seeing the billboard. It is a very movie moment, but I think there's something to be said for giving the audience some kind of clear inciting incident.
Yeah, I mean, it works well in a movie.
It works well in a movie, in a visual medium, yeah. And in the book, that decision all like happens in his head.
Yeah.
Which would be kind of boring to watch. Like he starts thinking about how nice it would be to skip Christmas, and then we see him crunching the numbers, and in the next scene he like goes to a travel agency.
Right.
Which would not have been particularly interesting in the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's semi-interesting to have Nora already be starting on Christmas when he floats this idea to her, because that's not the case in the book. They haven't really started doing anything yet.
Yeah.
Oh, Tim Allen's character being annoyed that his daughter joins the Peace Corps makes so much sense. It makes so much sense.
It really does.
And that element I didn't feel like was particularly present in the book.
I think this is before we knew Tim Allen was an asshole, but not too long before.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Did you catch the Ghostbusters reference?
Well, I caught the other one that we talked about in the prequel. I don't think I caught this one though.
The Con Ed, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, later in the movie when the power goes out, him and Dan Aykroyd are in the basement, and Tim Allen says, he turns to Dan Aykroyd as he's messing with the breakers, and he goes, "Do you know anybody at Con Ed?" Which in Ghostbusters 2, the Ghostbusters pretend they're from Con Ed when they're like working in the sewers or whatever.
Yeah. So. But there was another one earlier that I was a little surprised wasn't in the trivia.
Yeah. It wasn't.
Because I felt like it was a way more obvious.
It is.
Call out to Ghostbusters. When we're initially introduced to Dan Aykroyd's character, and Nora's like, "Oh, he's going to be upset," or something like that. And Tim Allen's like, "Who's he going to call?"
I missed that.
Yeah, you missed that?
I missed that. I don't know how I missed that, but I missed it. There you go.
The movie made the change of having Enrique and Blair know each other in college before they went to Peru, rather than having met in Peru and know each other for like less than a month before getting engaged.
Well, see, it's funny because I felt like the movie did both. The movie... Because at one point they said, she's like, Blair's like, "Hey, you know, Enrique introduced us. I introduced you in our dorm or whatever." But then later, Tim Allen says like something about how they've only known her and Enrique have only known each other for like a few weeks. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, wait a second, which? But because they do, she definitely does say like, "Oh, you know, Enrique, you met him." And I was wondering if that was like a reshoot situation that they like redid,
maybe,
or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I thought that was strange.
It is like a weird moment, but if that was their intention, I think that's a positive change.
Yeah,
to have them have like known each other for longer. I liked lukewarm liked the scene where Jamie Lee Curtis was trying to buy the ham from the couple in the grocery store line.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
It's tropey, but it's kind of fun. In the book, he hauls Frosty up onto the roof in pieces. It's like a 3-piece thing that you screw together.
Okay.
So I liked that the movie had them do it like all in one piece. Thought it was more comical. Then we got to have like the noose around Frosty's neck.
Yeah.
Even though they did miss potentially a good opportunity for some humor.
Yeah.
Some dark humor.
All right, that was it for Better in the Movie. We got a few things in the movie. Nailed it.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
A lot of this is actually really similar. It's a fairly faithful adaptation
it seems
in a lot
like
of
it so
ways.
far, yeah.
So this is a short list of just some things that I noted. The beginning of the movie is really spot on, where we start with dropping Blair off at the airport and then getting stuff from the grocery store in the pouring rain. And then he gets back to the car and she's like, well, did you talk to the butcher? And he's like, why? You wanted chocolate.
Yeah.
So that's all from the book. There is some minor commentary in both the book and the movie about women being the ones who do Christmas.
Yeah.
And her being the one who mainly has to deal with the fallout of his big scheme.
Yeah. Specifically like the social parts of Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, she's really the one. And it's even more so in the book because we go with him to work a few more times. And at work, all of his coworkers are like congratulating him. And they're like, oh, you're so smart.
Oh, yeah.
You're
See,
so
the movie
smart.
does the opposite.
Yeah.
The movie, like, he's getting some at work, too, where they're like, bah, humbug. Oh, you're not getting me anything for Christmas? Like, they're giving him shit at work, where that seems like,
Yeah, but she really has to deal with all of the social fallout from that.
Yeah.
Everyone putting up a giant Frosty on the roof. That's a thing that the neighborhood does.
Horrifying.
As I said, some commentary on suburbia.
But is it because that's like the good thing in the end? They're like, yep, pull back wide camera shot of all those Frosties. Look how beautiful
say it was
is.
Successful commentary. Okay. The newspaper article that they write is from their little local neighborhood newspaper or whatever about them skipping Christmas. The kids and their free Frosty quote unquote pranks. A lot of that is from the book. The sad tree that loses all of its needles on the way home, and then it's just a sad little branch. Luther falling off the roof, hanging by his ankle. We talked about that.
Yep.
And then the neighbors pulling together to help them decorate and make food and everything so they don't have to eat smoked trout.
There you go. Because smoked trout, why would you buy that? Frozen pizza's definitely better.
Yeah, right? She's like, it's better than frozen pizza.
Nope,
and
false.
we're like, is it?
I mean, I'm not saying smoked trout, it can't be good, but I'm just saying you're having a party with some people. Maybe just get some frozen pizzas as opposed to smoked trout.
We're having a pizza party. It's fine, you guys.
It's fine. That was it for the movie Nailed It. We got a few odds and ends before we get to the final verdict. This is like classic boomer husband and wife comedy in this movie of like husband hates wife jokes. That's the joke. They fight. They hate each other. They don't understand each other. They can't talk about things because we got married when we were 16 because we couldn't have sex, and we just married the first person we dated.
We just really wanted to have sex.
We just really wanted to have sex, so we
got married.
And I don't know if Tim Allen's technically a boomer. I mean, he is technically a boomer. Tim Allen is. I'm just saying. I don't know if, like, years-wise, if it fits into the baby boomer generation, but his personality,
he's a boomer in spirit,
which is really what the OK Boomer is all about. Not to get into that whole thing, but the OK Boomer meme is not about your age. It's about it's about your spirit. It's about how you feel about the world. And Tim Allen is definitely a boomer.
I felt so bad for Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie.
Yeah, she had to kiss Tim Allen.
Imagine making out with Tim Allen.
No.
Gross.
I won't. I refuse. I absolutely refuse.
So that scene with Nora meeting the priest at the mall while in her string bikini, I put it here under my general notes because honestly, I could not decide if it was better or worse in the book or the movie. Like, because in the movie, on the one hand, it's more horrible and awkward.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it's more horrible and awkward. So I did not know what to do with that.
I get what you're saying. It's just, you can't really,
I can't suss that one out, you guys. Sorry.
So we've talked about it a handful of times. I just want to touch on a little bit more, is that I'm like completely at the beginning of this movie on the Kranks side, and I don't know if that's the point or not. I think you're supposed to be.
I don't know what the point is.
I don't know either. But I'm totally on their side. They're just like, hey, we don't want to do this year because our daughter's not going to be here. It's sad. We're just going to go do our own thing. Let's not do Christmas. They maybe don't go about it the best way possible, but in general, fine, I'm on board with it. And the crazy reaction of their freaking weird neighbors who are like way too obsessed with their neighbors' personal lives. Like, I wave at our neighbors every now. Now, again, we don't own this house. We haven't lived here for years or whatever. But I occasionally wave at like our neighbors. I don't care what they get up to. I'm not involved with their life. It's so strange to me. And now I grew up in a neighborhood where neighbors were friends and we hung out and their parents hung out and all that sort of thing. But even then, I don't think it would be this weird, obsessive, like you have to do, like it's so strange. It's very weird to me. And I think that it's so culty and horrifying, and they should just be allowed to not do Christmas for a year.
Yeah.
So I haven't watched the video, and I I have to mention it just because it's influenced my viewing of this movie without having seen the content of the video. But April Atmansky, who was joined us for the Holes episode, she linked a video to us by a YouTuber named Jack Saint, who I've seen other of this YouTuber's videos, sort of a lefty media critic. In the light of like your Lindsay Ellis's, that sort of thing, who made a video about this movie, about how this movie is about cults. And again, I have not watched a second of this movie, but as soon as I saw that title, it got in my brain. And if you think about that when you watch this movie, again, without knowing anything he says in the episode or in the video or whatever, it is 100% the first half of this movie is like cult behavior 101, the shaming, the excising, the enforcement of like the norms between everybody that lives in this neighborhood, the weird ritualistic exercise that they all are forced to be a part of, and if they decide to deviate even slightly, they cut you off and they shame you and they threaten you in weird like it is ever like if you got on the cult checklist 100%, because there's a checklist out there, and he probably does this in the video if I had to guess. You go down the cult checklist, 100% this neighborhood checks off like every single thing like on the cult checklist. But what's strange to me is that the movie does that and then turns around and goes, and they're great people, and this is all A-okay. This is great.
I think this story was trying to do a Grinch thing.
Yeah.
But like didn't know how to put a spin on it to make it something other than just a retelling of the Grinch.
Yeah. The thing that's wild is I think what they needed to do, I can't even come up with a good idea to like rewrite this film, but I think what they needed to do is come up with a way to where the whole neighborhood realizes what they were doing was weird.
Yeah.
Tim Allen realizes maybe I was being a bit too...
Yeah.
They needed to find that peak centrism.
But they needed to do what the Jim Carrey Grinch does, because that's what happens in that movie.
Right.
Like everybody kind of comes together and realizes like, oh, we were all taking this way too far.
Yes, that's exactly what they needed to do. The neighborhood needed to realize, hey, maybe this isn't that big a deal, or like maybe we need to like calm down on being so weird and obsessive about everybody's lawn being the same and everybody's house being decorated and shaming people for not fitting into our perfect cultural norms that we've all developed for our weird cult. But also Tim Allen maybe needed to realize like, you know, like maybe he was being a little selfish or something. Yeah. Like not as much as the movie tries to make it out, I don't think, but like maybe a little bit. Try to find a way to...
He was maybe taking it a little too far with like being aggressively...
Right.
Like
maybe you could have sent out Christmas cards. Yeah. Maybe you could have like, you know...
like if it was so important to your neighbors, fuck, you can put up the lights then.
Yeah.
Because we don't care.
Yeah. Yeah, like there needed to be some sort of compromise or something, but it really kind of just ultimately comes to, nope, we're just doing what the neighbors wanted. We're putting up Frosty, we're decorating the house, we're going balls to the wall for Christmas.
Christmas.
And then maybe that too because then you could find a really interesting medium there where it is almost a sort of an anti-commercialism message to some extent, that all these trappings of Christmas that we all put up every year aren't as important. Like, I don't know how you would do it, but I think you come up with a way where you do most of the plot similarly, but then at the end they just decide maybe we don't need all these decorations.
You mean a line, maybe something like, maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store.
Right.
Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more.
Fair enough. And so, like, the Grinch already did it and did it way better. So you got me there, and you're not wrong. I that's why I love the Grinch. It's a great, the Jim Carrey one has its moments, but the animated one I love. It's great. It's delightful. And so I guess that is really like the message of that. So maybe they didn't want to completely steal that, but they just should have. They should have just stole that. They should have just done that, because it's more interesting and it's a better message. This doesn't really have a message. It's like nothing. It's like what the message is.
It's a sloppy, half-chewed peach sliding out of Tim Allen's mouth.
I didn't know where I was going, and then
Can we talk about how long the third act of this movie was?
It's so long. It's like a whole hour, last hour of the film. Because we hit the third act, what I assume is the third act, which is where they find out she's coming home. That feels like the third act beat.
That is the inciting incident of the third act.
It sure feels like it. And then I clicked the little timer on, and there was an hour of the movie left. And I was like, wait, what is happening? Okay, I guess that's what's going on. It's wild.
And it was wild to me too, because this book is 20 chapters. Okay, that last hour of the movie is 4 chapters of the book.
So 100%, yeah. Like we said, it's the third act, but the movie makes it most of the movie.
Yes, and I maybe they were thinking like, oh, scenes with them like panicking and quickly trying to make Christmas happen is going to be way more funny and amusing.
I think that's the thing.
I think was probably the motivation there. But then you end up having to like drag it out and add random shit that doesn't make any sense and doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah. I also think it's that because doing that is the most Christmassy, quote unquote, part of the movie.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the movie is him not doing Christmas.
Yeah.
And so if you spend most of the movie him not doing Christmas, it doesn't feel like that much of a Christmas movie. I mean, obviously it's still, but like, you know what I mean? So when they have that come way early, you get to spend the last hour of them putting up decorations, talking about Christmas food, hijinks at the supermarket, like all your traditional like Christmas hijinks. You get to do that for an hour as opposed to like the last 25 minutes or whatever.
Christmas hijinks.
Yeah, Christmas hijinks. I really wish they had cast somebody other than Tim Allen in this role. But I 100% get why they did it because of what we talked about earlier, where he's such a self-righteous asshole in this movie eventually, that I think that was on purpose, that like the third act like weird character turn that we talked about, we have to dislike Tim Allen.
Yeah.
To buy that, we have to dislike his character at this moment to buy his weird motivation twist to then like feel good about him overcoming that. Because at the beginning of this movie, when I was like on his side, I was like, this would be a really interesting movie if this character was played by like Tom Hanks, like this really affable guy who's just like wants to do something nice for him and his wife, and everybody's being insane to them.
Totally different movie.
That's what I mean. I actually think you could remake this movie as a dark comedy horror film where he decides they're skipping Christmas, and then the cult neighbors like take it to the nth degree, and it turns into this crazy, almost like Hot Fuzz style. Yeah, like the neighborhood.
That'd be interesting.
You know what I mean? Like you could do that with it. I think would be really interesting, where the neighborhood truly turns out to be not only like culty behavior with their thing, they're like actually like this crazy cult who's like murders people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that would be a really fun like through line for a Christmas movie, is to basically take this movie but turn it into Hot Fuzz, and then you have like a really clever, I think I've had that exact recommendation for another movie before, have I not? I feel like there was another movie where I was like, take this movie but turn it into Hot Fuzz.
Yes.
Was I not?
That was
Turns out all of my movie recommendations are just turn them into Edgar Wright movies. Makes sense, but I can't remember. It doesn't...
Oh, tell us what it was.
Oh, can you?
I will remember what you made that recommendation on.
But anyways, so if they did that turn where it was like this weird dark comedy horror thing where like people end up dying or something and it's like actually a cult, and that could be a really fun commentary on this sort of weird, like you take the commentary that it seems like the first act of this movie is going for, but then follow through with it over the course of the whole movie and take it to the really dark, weird extreme that I kind of wanted it to go to, but then cast, instead of an asshole like Tim Allen, cast somebody like Tom Hanks, or somebody like that's a really great actor but who's also really affable but can also kind of be of a smart ass but in a lovable way, like that's your Tom Hanks or whatever. Do that, this movie be dynamite.
Oh, I agree.
Did you figure out?
It might have been the Legend of Sleepy Hollow movie.
Oh, it may have been. I can't remember, but it doesn't. If you remember, you write in. I'll try to remember. If I scroll back through the episodes, I might be able to remember. But I swear there was a movie where I was like, it also may not have been an episode. It may have been like a movie review. I can't remember.
Well, we were for a while doing book and movie recommendations.
Yeah, but let's wrap this thing up because we're almost done. There's some terrible montage. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Did you figure out? There's some terrible montage editing at the end of this movie.
God. To
the music. They start playing some terrible Christmas music, and there's like 87 cuts in like...
It was like making me feel sick.
Oh, it's headache inducing. It's a nightmare. I don't know whose decision that was, but they don't do that. It's really, really bad.
Yeah, never do that.
No, don't ever do that. You had a note about the racism, which we brought up earlier, so we got to talk about that before we get to the end.
The racism in this book. Oh boy. I'm just gonna read some little snippets from Skipping Christmas, a novel by John Grisham. Okay, so this is after they find out that Blair is coming home, and that she is bringing her Peruvian fiancé. Who's coming to the party? I haven't got that far yet. Now move and change clothes. You look ridiculous. Don't Peruvians have dark skin? He asked. Nora froze for a second. They stared at each other, then both looked away. I guess it doesn't matter now, she said.
I guess what doesn't matter now?
Don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Next. As a South American, Enrique was more than a little hesitant to voluntarily get into the back of a police car.
I don't know if that's racist so much as...
I feel like it's a little racist from the author.
I'm not saying it couldn't be, but it could... Because that...
I feel like we're making some assumptions about who he is and where he comes from.
I guess that's true. Okay, fair enough. But it's also, corrupt police is a rather large issue in a lot of South America.
I get it.
So, but yeah, you're not wrong in that regard.
And then a couple of lines over.
But also, I would be worried about that regardless of where I was. Like at the
fair.
Cops asked me to get in the back of a police car in America. I'll be fine. I'm just a big white dude. But, it's its own problem here.
And a couple lines later, this is one of the police officers talking. Had a cousin went to Mexico one time, Celino said, but let it go because there was nothing else to add. The cousin had almost died, but Celino wisely decided not to venture into third world horror stories. Is Mexico a third world country?
I don't believe so.
Because I don't believe
also,
it is.
We don't call them third world countries anymore. I don't know when this was. This was 2001, I think. People still call places third world countries. From my understanding, that is not the preferred way to describe it's developing countries.
Right, yes, absolutely.
And that sort of thing, maybe developed countries, and even that may not be the proper way to refer to that anymore. But yeah, we don't call places third world countries anymore.
I also don't think that any of that describes Mexico accurately.
No, definitely not third world country. I don't think. Even traditionally, what you would call third world country, I don't think that's been accurate for Mexico for a very long time. Yeah. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
And finally, back with the Kranks. The door opened and Blair rushed in. Nora and Luther both glanced at her first, then quickly looked beyond to see how dark Enrique was. He wasn't dark at all! Exclamation.
Hooray! He passes the skin color test! John Grisham. Everybody. That's like the Family Guy sketch where he pulls out like the paint swatches and is like holds them up and is like terrorist up to like, you know, white person or whatever. Oh boy.
Do you remember the other day when I was finishing this and I was reading and I kept putting the book down and going, oh my God, that's what I was reading.
Woof, woof, woof. He was so light-skinned. He was just like us. Just a normal human, not like those other people.
And then later, like a page later, they decide to like him more. His English is perfect, Nora whispered to Blair. Better than mine, she whispered back. I thought you said he'd never been to the U.S.
He's so articulate.
He was educated in London.
And well-spoken.
Yup. And not dark at all! Exclamation mark.
Whoa! God darn.
It's gonna be a wolf for me, dog.
Real big one. Holy cow. That's, dope.
Yep.
Great stuff.
That's a thing that I read for you guys.
A+ stuff. Oh boy. Oh, okay. Let's, that's, my only other note was, man, I thought this movie needed to end, and then Dan Aykroyd started playing accordion and singing.
It's also a thing that happened.
Let's do it. Final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
In the spirit of skipping Christmas, I'm skipping my final verdict this week.
What?
I don't want to award a better status to either of these. I really, really don't.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. I can see that.
The book was bad. The movie was bad. Don't read it. Don't watch it. Watch The Grinch.
Yeah. That's like that for real. Like if that's for a similar, like a much infinitely better version of this story, like of this kind of idea of like a moral for
read
a Christmas
The Grinch,
movie.
Watch The Grinch.
Read The Grinch, watch The Grinch.
Don't read or watch this bullshit.
It's terrible.
It's awful.
The worst. All right. That's going to do it for this very special Christmas episode of This Film Is Lit. As always, you can do us a giant favor by supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Support us for as much as you want. You can also do us another huge favor by giving us a review on iTunes or anywhere else that you can review us, that you listen to us. But reviews on iTunes are the ones that are most important. We just hit like 63 reviews, and we just hit 5 stars. We're up to 5. We were at 4.9. We had all 5-star reviews and 1 4-star review for a long time. And so for the longest time, we were at 4.9. But we just hit enough 5-star reviews the other day that we are now a 5.0 rated review with our 63 reviews.
Nice.
So there you go.
Thanks, everybody.
It's fantastic. We really appreciate that you guys enjoy listening to our podcast. We will have an episode of, I think it will come out after this, of our review of The Rise of Skywalker. We saw it. We're going to see it again this coming weekend, and I think I want to wait until after that. To review.
I think a second viewing would probably do us some good.
I think a second viewing will help and allow me to write some more notes down and kind of gather my head around it. We've talked about it. We had a post on Twitter and Facebook and stuff about it, that we saw it and that we're going to do a review that will be out, and that won't just be for patrons. Normally our movie reviews are just for patrons, but we've done the other two. Well, we weren't doing this podcast when Force Awakens came out, but we did a main episode for Last Jedi, so we're going to do the same thing for Rise of Skywalker. We'll have a bonus episode that'll be for everybody, but then most of our other movie reviews and that sort of thing will just be for patrons moving forward. But you can look forward to that probably this coming weekend, maybe like Monday, the Monday after this episode comes out. So like right before New Year's. Yeah. You'll get our Rise of Skywalker feelings. Our little brief spoiler-free thing is neither of us completely hated it, but there were lots of things we didn't like. Yeah. And a few things we did, and it was okay. I didn't dislike it as much as I thought I would, but I also disliked some things more than I thought I would.
It's a one thumb going, yeah.
That's a one thumb slightly down, teetering back and forth. But we'll get into it in the full episode, so you can look forward to that soon. And finally, Katie, what do we got coming up next?
So next week, we are taking a break from our usual format. We'll put out the Rise of Skywalker review, like we said, but we won't have a regular This Film Is Lit episode next week. We're taking a week off. The week after that, we will be back in 2020.
Yep.
And we are starting out, we'll have a prequel episode. We're starting with a listener's choice. So you guys will be able to vote on what you would like to hear about. This listener's choice has a theme, and the theme is I Didn't Know That Was a Book, Disney edition.
Ooh.
So our options will be Bambi.
Didn't know that was a book.
The Rescuers.
Didn't know that was a book.
And 101 Dalmatians.
Don't think I knew that was a book either.
Yeah.
There you go. So there you go. That's your options.
Some options to choose from.
You get to vote. We're doing a Disney movie. That'll be a lot of fun. So like she said, next week we're off, but you'll get a Rise of Skywalker review kind of in place of a normal episode. And then after that, we'll have our prequel episode. And then in 3 weeks from now, when you're listening to this, we'll have our main episode about one of those Disney films. Mm-hmm. And until that time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies, and have a Merry Christmas.
Unless you're skipping it.
Unless you're skipping it.
Which is totally valid.
Have a happy holidays. Do that too. Do whatever you want. Just enjoy yourself. Live life. It's great. And Happy New Year. We love you. Bye.